Okay, folks, 30 seconds. Here we go. Hi, Amanda. Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on April 8th, 2026 in the Council Chambers. Roll call this evening. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Prenger. Councillor Steinoff Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
Councillor Williams. Okay, and I'd like to acknowledge our staff and guests that are with us this evening. Deputy Mayor, please.
We'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewa of Nawash, unceded First Nation, the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Do any council members have any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda this evening? Just one of note that we need a mover and seconder. Actually, the council approved the following deletion from the agenda. 6.1H surplus lands report, moved by Councillor Kavanagh and Stewart. Just to note that the open section is deleted, but it still remains in the closed portion of the meeting this evening. All in favor? That's carried. I'd like to remind council members to disclose any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof, either now or as it arises in the meeting. And at this point, we need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held March 25, 2026 be adopted as printed. Councillor Steinoff Gray and Councillor Blackwell, all in favor? That's carried. Moving on to delegations and presentations. So this evening we welcome Jennifer Morley, who's the president of One Point Association of Realtors, and Charlene Randall Clayton, who will be speaking on the One Point Housing Report. Welcome. And also I see Linda Bowers back there as well. So for council's information, this report has generated some council interest, and I've afforded the opportunity for the presentation to be extended to 10 minutes plus time at the end for questions, clarifications if that's needed. Welcome, Charlene. Where you go? The floor is yours.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. There's not much of an echo. Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Craig, Deputy Mayor Clark, and members of council. My name is Charlene Randall Clayton, and I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Peter Benninger Realty here in Kincardine, and a representative of the One Point Association of Realtors Government and External Relations Committee. I am joined this evening by Jennifer Morley, President of the One Point Association of Realtors and broker with Royal LePage RCI Realty in Owen Sound. For those of you who may not know, One Point is an association representing realtors here in Kincardine and the surrounding area. We were formed on October 1st, 2024, when 4 real estate boards, the Guelphin District Association of Realtors, Huron-Perth Association of Realtors, Lakeland Association of Realtors, and Realtors Association of Grey-Bruce Owen Sound officially integrated to become the One Point Association of Realtors. The new association represents over 2,700 real estate professionals across the regions of Huron-Perth, Grey-Bruce, Wellington, Georgian Bay, Simcoe, Parry Sound, Haliburton, and Muskoka. At one point, we are proud to work with elected officials from all parties to promote public policy that supports a strong and vibrant real estate market where Canadians from all walks of life can find an affordable place to call home. Building homes, strengthening communities. This is the report that One Point published recently. So we are thrilled today to be briefing you on a new housing policy research report we released earlier this year called Building Homes, Strengthening Communities, a review of municipal housing policy best practices across the One Point region. A copy of the report has been shared with Council. Please feel free to review it as we move through our presentation. Building Homes, Strengthening Communities is the first of its kind. This report evaluates housing policies of the 10 largest municipalities in our region using the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's 10 Housing Accelerator Fund best practices. To date, most research in Canada on housing and housing policy has focused on large urban centers like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. At one point, we wanted to change that. Our goal was to complete the research that made a substantive contribution toward public policy discussions in the communities we serve to help our municipal partners create the conditions to get more homes built faster so all residents can find attainable homes for themselves and their families. And I am very happy to report that Building Homes, Strengthening Communities is doing just that. About the report, to start, the report reviews the housing policies of 10 municipalities across One Point's region: Guelph, Centre, Wellington, Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, Midland, Orillia, Stratford, Owen Sound, Bracebridge, and of course, Kincardine. These communities are the largest in One Point's area with the most residents and the most active real estate markets. These communities are the largest in One Point's area, our methodology was to review the housing policies of these municipalities against CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund best practices. These best practices provide a nationally recognized framework for assessing how local governments are advancing housing affordability and supply. Although not all municipalities within the One Point region have applied for or received funding through the Housing Accelerator Fund, the CMHC's 10 best practices remain a valuable and objective framework for evaluating local housing policy. The HAF model reflects the federal government's latest evidence-based guidance on how municipalities can unlock new housing supply through zoning reform, regulatory modernization, and targeted incentives. They include changes like ending exclusionary zoning and enabling gentle density, making municipally owned lands available for housing, increasing process efficiency through digitization and delegation, prioritizing approvals for affordable and rental housing, and reviewing and modernizing development charges and fee schedules. I'll now pass things over to One Point President Jennifer Morley to take us through One Point's findings.
Sorry. Thank you, Charlene. Our report finds that our municipalities are taking many important steps towards boosting housing supply and improving affordability. Every municipality we studied had taken substantive action to improve the local conditions to build housing, and so our focus was on how to build on that progress. In Kincardine, the municipality is making strong and commendable progress when it comes to improving housing supply and affordability. Namely, our research found that Kincardine has adopted several CMHC best housing practices, including implementing a fully digital permitting system through Cloud Permit, allowing online applications, payments, and inspections. In 2024, the municipality introduced a community improvement plan providing tax increment equivalent grants and pre-development study and design grants to support attainable and mixed-use housing. And in Kincardine, designated municipal surplus lands for potential housing development under a Housing First official plan policy. These are important policy changes that will help create the conditions for more housing of all types across the municipality. Importantly, the recommendations we are outlining today are closely aligned with the direction already being advanced by staff through the Housing Action Plan and this progress report. For example, the plan suggests reducing barriers in zoning, improving predictability in approvals, strengthening coordination, leveraging municipal lands, and enhancing incentives and capacity. OnePoint's recommendations are intended to reinforce and build on this work by advancing more as-of-right permissions, formalizing municipal land strategy, and strengthening coordination and accountability through a dedicated housing function or committee. Our first recommendation focuses on continuing to evolve Kincardin's zoning framework to support a broader range of housing options. While Kincardine has already taken important steps, including adopting a new comprehensive zoning bylaw and permitting additional residential units, there is an opportunity to move further toward as-of-right permissions. Specifically, OnePoint recommends permitting up to 4 units on all serviced residential lots and enabling small-scale housing forms such as multiplexes and townhomes along key corridors and within downtown. The rationale is to provide greater clarity and predictability to small-scale developers looking to build infill housing projects. Reducing reliance on site-specific rezoning can help lower barriers for smaller-scale builders, shorten approval timelines, and support a more consistent pipeline of new housing. The second recommendation is to build on the municipality's existing housing framework by taking a more proactive approach to municipal land. Kincardine has already established a housing action plan and has demonstrated a willingness to work with partners. The next step is to formalize a strategy that identifies and prepares municipally owned sites for housing, particularly affordable and attainable units, and to explore partnerships with nonprofit and private sector partners to deliver mixed income developments. We also recommend establishing a dedicated housing reserve fund supported through a combination of land-related revenues and other municipal sources to provide a stable foundation for ongoing housing initiatives. Finally, we recommend strengthening the municipality's ability to track and coordinate housing delivery. While there have been discussions around enhancing governance, including the potential for a housing-focused committee, there is currently no centralized function to consistently track approvals, timelines, and outcomes. Establishing a housing implementation office or a dedicated function within the Planning and Development Department would help address this gap. This function would also support coordination with partners such as Bruce County and the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to ensure the town is well positioned to access available funding and programs. In closing, we want to reiterate that Kincardine is already demonstrating strong leadership when it comes to advancing housing supply and affordability. The steps the municipality has taken to date are meaningful, and they provide a solid foundation to build on. The recommendations we have outlined today are intended to support that progress by enhancing predictability in the planning framework, strengthening the ability to partner and deliver at housing, and ensuring that outcomes are tracked and achieved over time. We look forward to continuing to work with council and staff as a constructive partner in this effort. Together, there is a real opportunity to ensure that Kincardine remains a community where people at all stages of life can find a place to call home. So I thank you for your time and consideration, and we would be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Jennifer and Charlene, for your presentation. Linda, you didn't missay a single word. It was fabulous, your presentation back there. Right on. Any questions, comments from council members? Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I did have a question. If I'm reading it right, because I looked at all of the data that you'd provided, I think Kincardin's the only group that doesn't have right-of-way. Am I right in that? Like, obviously, it's just, I believe, Guelph, Collingwood, and Orillia that has right-of-way for 4 units. But I thought it was just Kincardine, and I was curious how that changes the ability to move forward housing initiatives. Like, you've obviously seen it in action, because based on the quick look I did, you've got 3 adopters of the 4-unit and 3 adopters of the 3-unit. I'm just curious if there's any trends you could tell us that you've seen where they've adopted it that we might expect to see here if we made said changes.
So just for clarity,
two?
that's a great question. It is, the terminology is as of right.
As of right, yeah.
As of right. No, just for clarity, make sure we're all on the same page. They were talking about multi-unit on like corridors, so it's not the right of way. As of right, okay.
Yeah, as of right units. It is early days, to be fair. So yes, Guelph has certainly had 4 units as of right in their core. We're still kind of waiting to see certainly the economic outlook, and certainly global issues have affected purchasers and their willingness. So for us, we're still finding that there is pressure on the market for people looking to downsize, which provides pressure cyclically from people looking to upsize. Seniors that want to come down and move into a smaller unit aren't doing that because those units are not available. And similarly, first-time buyers or people looking just for a smaller unit are not seeing those units available because that supply simply is not there. That hasn't been built. So it's going to take a couple of years to see the effects of that. So I'm going to say I'm encouraged by what's happening, but we'll have to pull some more data for you to see precisely, because like I said, it's early days for those municipalities. Okay.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through your chair. Thank you for coming tonight. I wish I felt as good about the progress of actions that we've completed so far. I'd actually say, though, that when it comes to results, most of what we've done, if I think specifically about below market rental and home ownership, there's been negligible change right now. And lastly, I'll just say, as a member of the housing committee that has been formed, I really look forward to using whatever sources of information and ideas that exist, such as ones that you're providing tonight, to help us do something different, because from my perspective, the status quo is not working. Thanks.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. And through you, thank you for coming tonight and sharing this with us. I think it does crystallize a lot of the next steps we've started chatting about in terms of creating our Housing Action Plan 2.0. And I think it provides some really good insight into and kind of gathering and really identifying what we can possibly include into that to make some real progress and build on what we have been doing, but actually hopefully see some more tangible results as a result of that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, thanks once again for coming. It has been a struggle for most municipalities, including our own. I'm looking forward. I think we have a very progressive new committee, or housing, and I hope they'll be working with you too. The thing that I really seen some success, I think Collingwood's trying to do it, but I know our friends in Whistler have done a very good job about affordable rents and affordable housing, and working with businesses and having employees from local business other than Bruce Power that actually get to rent these kind of places. And I'm hoping with surplus land, we can maybe work with a local business and start building these, with the caveat, we can't put it out in market, because right now market with our friends at Bruce Power and their contractors is really have raised our rents up to unacceptable, or not unacceptable, but definitely non-affordable for most people. Thank you.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I did have another question for our Chief Building Officer, actually, if that's acceptable. One of the things in the report that I noticed, it talked about how Collingwood is one of best in practice for those pre-approved drawings, like detached ARUs and such, and permit-ready building plans for homeowners. I'm not sure how that relays. I know we rely quite a bit for the ARU piece on the county toolkit. How comparable is what the county has available to what Collingwood and some of the others noted in this report, would you say? Or if you don't have an answer, it's okay. I'm just asking.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor. I'm honestly not too familiar. I've spoken with our friends at Saugeen Shores that did have the pre-approved drawings. There was some issues with that process. I do believe some design issues for legalities, having a blanket design that could be used by any person. I think the designer had some issues from insurance issues, but it's definitely something that we could look further into. Currently, the process is we have the homeowner have their own designs brought in. We assess them against the building code, and they're approved on a case-by-case basis, not a blanket case. But again, something we could look at further if council wishes.
Just for clarity, it's not my understanding that the county has any pre-approved drawings. I believe a municipality have, but I don't believe the county does at this point. Good question, though. Councillor Blackwell, do you have a question?
No, I was just a thought on that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, through your chair. I also did have one question, and it might be unfair, but I'll ask. In the report, one of the things that jumped out at me is we talked about housing inventory and the impact it has on affordability. And I noted that Collingwood went from 0.79 months of inventory in 2021, and they're now sitting at 9 months, which seems like a fairly good, I know that 9 months inventory isn't good based on the report, but it seemed like a vast improvement between 2021 to when you provided this data, which I think ended in 2025 cycle. Is there anything you could point to that is how they move that needle? Like, I didn't know if maybe it had anything, like they, I believe, have a short-term accommodation bylaw, but I was curious. I was just curious if there's anything you noted through your background as realtors, but I understand you came from Owen Sound, so you might not be Collingwood necessarily basis.
Yeah, I can't comment specifically on Collingwood. Only anecdotally, a suggestion I would make is that's strictly a change in market conditions, tariff conditions, and has put buyers kind of on the fence. The buyers still exist. That pressure is pent up and it is waiting to come out again. We had a massive boom during COVID. Those people just came off, decided I've hit my threshold, I'm backing off. We had tariffs go in place. People were concerned about their job, and it's all, and rightly or wrongly, it's an internal feeling for folks, whether, you know, they need to take the time and say, I'm stable in my employment, I feel comfortable enough, I'm confident enough in the market that I'm going to re-enter it. Those people did not disappear. So they're just hanging back. So when we're talking about supply in the future, we're still at least 10, 15 years behind what we require to get over that threshold, that pent-up demand that is still existing. And that's so, and again, that's a generalization, around the region, and for us as realtors with boots on ground, that's what we're, you know, that's what we see day to day.
I really appreciate the comments and you guys coming and the report. So I personally want to say thank you. Looking at the data for 10 communities, we have the same problems, some similar approaches, some slightly different approaches that are something that I think are very good for us to look at. I particularly like the notes on how municipalities maintain control of what's within their control when working with partners to ensure the outcomes we expect. So if it's acceptable, I'd ask that we refer this to either the Housing Committee and staff or the Housing Committee.
Yes, which is appropriate because that's one of the actions we can do. Our CIO and Manager of Strategic Initiatives and I were creating the framework for the agenda, and that was one of the points raised, that we were expecting, hopeful that council would refer this through staff to the committee for our first meeting for further consideration. Okay. Jennifer, Charlene, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate the information and look forward to future conversations. Very good.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you.
All right, so now I'd like to welcome Daryl Perry from Lakeside Downtown Kincardine BIA, who's going to talk about the Taste of Kincardine upcoming. Daryl, please.
Hello, councillors. Thank you for your time and allowing us to talk about this exciting event that is occurring this coming May long weekend. So first of all, my name is Darryl Perry. I'm a member of the Kincardine BIA Subcommittee of Council. And I just want to go over a new event, Kincardine's next big event, as it says in the presentation, just to give you an update on the progress. This is an ongoing initiative within a long-term strategy to grow our shoulder season in Kincardine, particularly on Queen Street. It's a fantastic event which we've managed to secure sponsorship from, in particular a partnership in Bruce Power, which we thank Bruce Power for that, considering it is the first of an annual event where we feel it's important to secure a partner that can be with us from the start, and they certainly bought into the theory behind it. So I'm not going to go verbatim through it, but I will touch on the key points. So if you'd like to turn the page. The event itself, the thinking behind Kincardine, A Taste of Summer, is that we give people an opportunity over the May long weekend, an opportunity they don't currently have, to taste all the fantastic things that Kincardine has to offer during the summer. All the things people know Kincardine for in the long weekend. And right now, or in past years, we haven't had a lot going on in May. And as such, the BIA felt that this is a great opportunity to schedule another event. Events are getting expensive to run, so we're very cognizant of that. The event, I will say that it is definitely a collaboration, even though the BIA and Bruce Power are championing it. It is a collaboration, and I'll elaborate a little further on that. The dates are May 16, 17 and 18, so the long weekend in May, 6 weeks and counting. If you'd like to turn the page, please. So it is 3 days. Day one is very much a day of official things and firsts. The launch of and opening of the Tourism Information Centre, the official launch, I should say. And that will include a number of elements. We are working for this year with the tourism group, and they will also be launching a lakeside launch, which is technically what their part of the program is called. And that is certainly Victoria Park and food trucks and live music. But in addition to that, as we progress through the day and the weekend, you'll see the whole idea is that we celebrate the whole of Queen Street. This has many elements to it. This is not just about one area. And so as we progress, you'll see day one is very much about live music. We have strived on the whole event not to close the street too much. Where possible, we've used the spaces that we've always used, in particularly for small-scale live music, and that will happen throughout the day, culminating in a fantastic live music event at sunset. Something that the BIA has been talking about together with tourism is how do we better use Queen's Lookout, and that will be the location for a sunset live music session. This is all free, by the way. We also have a kids fun zone set up on Harbour Street, so if you'd like to, next slide. Day two continues with the official elements. This, for the BIA and for downtown, will be about the official patio season opening and the celebration that we're all looking for and on brunch on Queen Street. Again, there will be some official elements around it. It will also culminate in the north end of town having, we're calling it a mini car show, but we're working together with the Kincardine Car Show group to bring that, in addition to the first Kincardine Scottish Pipe Band Parade. Again, ticking the lists of Kincardine's most memorable things during the summer. Again, always kids fun zone. We have free yoga happening in the north end, and of course always roaming Blinky, which is our symbol of the downtown. And then on the final day, if you'd like to turn the page please, it culminates in the first Monday market in Victoria Park, and more live music and more roaming Blinky. So, and the things that I'll go over quickly in this particular piece is we are also working with our business partners downtown to activate them during the day. We have extended invitations to all the big event coordinators and charities to come and participate. We will be creating space down there, and in addition, Bruce Power will also hopefully be present throughout the whole event with a display. If you'd like to turn the final page, We also, I just want to know quickly, so why this event? I've already mentioned that this is about attracting visitors on the shoulder seasons, which will be an ongoing process. It also is about reminding residents of the fantastic events all crammed into one weekend, why they live in a fantastic Kincardine during summer. It will also help create a vibrant lakeside downtown through encouraging seasonal patios in line with what Council has done in supporting seasonal patios and encouraging them. And finally, and I think the most important point, is encouraging greater collaboration. This is always vital, whether it's the BIA and Bruce Power, whether it's the BIA and the municipal teams, whether it's about the BIA and event holders, and in particularly, it's also about the businesses and how they engage the events and the charities in the area. This is a real good news story, a Hold Hands event, and we're all very excited about it and wanted to communicate that to Council. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Daryl. Questions from council members? Pretty straightforward. Yeah, kind of works up an appetite, doesn't it? Councillor Blackwell, please.
No, thank you. I was just going to say I'm looking forward to it. I'm really hoping for good weather. And I'm glad to see that our tourism partners, the business community, and the BIA and Chamber are all working together on this with Bruce Power as a partner. I think it's just going to be such a great kickoff to the summer, and I'm really looking forward to being able to come down and check it out.
Okay, thanks very much, Daryl. Look forward to it. All right, Council, moving on. We addressed Tiverton Water Supply funding model, and we need a mover and seconder that Council endorse the funding model for the Tiverton Water Supply project, which allocates project costs on a 50-50 basis between growth, specifically development charges, and existing users on the utility rates. And further, that the municipality proceed with external debt financing for the full project cost, with repayments supported equally by development charges and utility rates in accordance with the cost allocation. Moved by Councillors Steinoff, Gray, and Kavanagh. Director, would you like to speak to this first, or Roxana? And then we can get to some questions. Roxana, please.
Okay, through you, Mayor. So this report presents the recommended funding model for the Tiverton Water Supply project, and council direction is sought to allocate the project costs 50-50 between growth and existing water consumers, and to proceed with external debt financing repaid through development charges and water rates. The total project cost is estimated at $5.41 million. And staff applied a capacity-based allocation methodology that's consistent with the Development Charges Act. An analysis showed that approximately 50% of system capacity is required to serve future development and 50% to serve existing users. So as a result, $2.705 million, so half is allocated to DCs and the other half is allocated to be recovered from utility rates. This reflects the principle that growth pays for growth, while existing users fund the portion of infrastructure that benefits them. Back in 2021, I just wanted to touch on the water rate harmonization component. So back in 2021, Council approved harmonized water rates across Kincardine and Tiverton systems. Prior to that harmonization, Tiverton had a small standalone reserve fund that was not sufficient at the time to fund major capital needs. Significant rate spikes would have been required for Tiverton users alone. So the harmonization created a more stable full cost recovery framework and a shared system renewal across the broader water user base. This project was not originally included in the financial plan that was presented back in 2025 from Hemson in terms of calculating the water rate. So we requested that Hemson Consulting review this information and update the funding scenario as a result of incorporating those costs into the plan. And the outcome of that was that instead of having annual rate increases of 4% up to 2034, it would increase to 4.6%. That is 0.6% of an increase in the water rates that would be required through 2034. So when translated back to a typical residential metered customer consuming 200 cubic meters per year, the incremental impact is $54 by the year 2034. So instead of an annual bill of $1,103, it would increase by 5% to $1,157, which confirms that the project is affordable within the existing rate framework. Debt financing is being recommended in this case because the current reserve fund balances are not sufficient to finance this project through cash. So this is a typical approach that would be held if we had capital projects that were required to be funded that the reserve funds were not sufficient for at the time of having to do the project. So this is a common practice. The recommendation is to use external debt with non-growth debt serviced through the water rates, and the growth-related debt to be serviced through development charges. So in conclusion, we're requesting that Council endorse the 50-50 growth and non-growth cost allocation, as well as to approve the funding through external debt financing with repayment supported through development charges and utility rates.
Yep, I'll get to you. Director Weiser, anything to add to that, or? Okay. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through your chair. I asked a number of questions today related to the initial report, and there was an additional financing report added. Thank you for that. The basic premise of the question I asked was, and it specifically had to do with half, so 2.7 million out of the proposed project, which would have been for, let's call it replacement capital. And the question was about other means of funding it that didn't require borrowing. The point, we have a reserve and a reserve fund policy that actually currently encourages interfund borrowing in order to eliminate debt servicing costs, which is part of the reason why I went there in the first place. I did propose some possible sources, one of which was the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund, and I wasn't necessarily thinking about the principal in the fund because, as we all know, the policy is basically in a way that protects the goose and doesn't kill it so that it can keep making laying eggs, or the Community Benefits Reserve Fund, or coming proceeds from the sale of West Area Power. Some of the arguments or points made in the other direction had to do with unfairly subsidizing water users by from non-water users. That didn't come out right. I think some of my peers know what I mean in here. But as the treasurer mentioned at the beginning, when recounting the history of rate harmonization, I would look at that situation and say, since 2021, part of the reason to harmonize rates was that the Tiverton water system couldn't handle replacement or new capital on its own. So in effect, once that went into place, the rest of the water system in the municipality of Kincardine was subsidizing Tiverton. So I think it's completely valid question for how do we do this in such a way that minimizes the effects on the water users as a whole. And also, I'd just like to point out is that in putting money into Tiverton, into the water, especially if it's done during using inter-reserve fund borrowing, wouldn't involve subsidizing these water system improvements by non-water users, but in a sense is an investment. Not only would they get the return on the money back to the reserve fund was borrowing, and from that perspective, I'm thinking if we have the ability to loan money to ourselves, better to pay ourselves than to pay the province, but also enabling housing creates more housing, which increases the tax base, which is better for all the ratepayers in the municipality of Kincardine, regardless of whether they're water users or not. So I still not, I guess what I'm saying in summary is I'm still not seeing a compelling argument, both within the wording in our own policies, why not to explore funding this other than by going to the government and paying them.
Good point.
Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, perhaps the Director of Finance could explain how this policy or this proposed method of going forward for funding this particular project might be different than the previous experiences the municipality has had with the stranded debt pipeline issues that occurred previously. the biggest concern that I've always seen with borrowing from ourselves and we'll pay ourselves back later is that it's very easy for a future council not to, and then in turn raid from a different source to pay for it. So while you may absolutely be in agreement with this council that killing the goose to stop the eggs from being laid is the right decision, there's very little to stop that from happening in a different direction.
Director, any comment to the query?
Through you, Mayor, yeah, so that's a good comment. That is something that the municipality has had to deal with in the past with respect to the unfunded debt from the Shoreline Pipeline project. It wasn't internal borrowing in that case. It was just surplus cash that was on hand that those funds were used to offset the costs until eventually eventually the water users decided to hook up to the system. And then, of course, there was a decision to fund that shortfall once and for all when the hookups didn't materialize, to fund it from the Healthcare Reserve Fund. So yes, that is what happened in that case. Similarly, we have had instances where we've invested in, as an example, the Connaught Park sewage pumping station upgrade several years ago, where we didn't have the development charges on hand at the time, and we borrowed internally from the sewer reserve fund. And then every year we would collect sewer development charges, and we would offset, and we would take that income and then apply it directly to the sewer reserve fund to fund that project. And that was fully repaid over time through that process. I think the question here is, where would we be pulling those funds from? Because we still can't pull from the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund, because we still can't pull from that principal. And that fund was never designed to be used for internal borrowing. So that would be my one comment there. So we would have to be looking for another internal source.
Jim, mind?
Councillor Hinchberger?
I'd just like to counter a couple of those points. Often what's used is this idea about the policy says this and the policy says that. Well, we do have a reserve and a reserve fund policy that encourages inter-fund borrowing. I mean, if we're going to quote other policies, the other thing I would say is that, I'm not going to pull it up here, it'll take too long, but if you look at the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund, I want to reemphasize again, I'm not necessarily talking about principal, I'm talking about the returns on that principal. I'm not talking about cutting into the principal. I think we're probably somewhere due, I can't remember the inception date of the fund, but we're probably getting pretty close, where we're going to get an annual report that's going to outline the performance of the fund over the past 12 months, including its returns. I do a little monitoring of the markets myself, and we saw preliminary stuff, and I'm not ready to say that there won't be any returns. Again, I need to reemphasize here, I not necessarily talking about the principal in the legacy fund. And I'm pretty sure the policy for the legacy fund provides for annual transfers from that fund into other reserve funds. So it looks to me like that policy, while it wouldn't necessarily provide for a direct line from this to do that, it does. I don't see it restricting what reserve funds you could transfer your annual allotment, say typically would have been in the $500,000 or whatever, into another reserve fund. So I guess what I'm just saying in here is, if we're going to use the policies in this argument, let's use them all. Okay.
Just for my own clarity, Councillor Hinchberger, please. So the intent of your discussion here is to the treasurer, or the director of corporate services has said that, we're going to look to external financing to cover the cost of the repayment, which is coming from development charges and from the utility rate. You're still, I think what I'm hearing is that you're still asking that external funding to be fully financed from DCs and from utility rates. The repayment isn't going to change, but what you're asking about is where that external funding comes from, financing, whether it's internal or whether it's external. That's the gist? Okay. So, but there's still going to be full repayment from both the utility users and from the DCs.
Yeah, principal and interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't know, because we had talked about subsidization, but there really isn't any subsidization at all if the full repayment is being expected from both utility users and the DC charges. Director, please.
So through you, Mayor. So just to Councillor Hinchberger's point, yes, we can absolutely, council can decide to take the interest income and set it aside for a reserve fund. And I guess if the question is, can you build up a new reserve fund, or can you build up the reserve fund to then eventually take this money and pay for the construction costs? Is that, and if that's the question, the answer is yes, you can do that.
Yep. One of the unknowns I don't have, sorry, through your chair. Like, I acknowledge one of the unknowns I don't have right now is what is the balance of the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund in relation to its starting value on the date it was, whatever the term is.
Director, do you want to respond, please?
Yes, so through you, Mayor. So yes, I don't have that currently. It's available and it'll be available in June. However, the interest income, council has already earmarked that in the 2026 budget for the full 500,000 for this current year. It is still very premature. We have been transitioning funds gradually, and there are still some funds that have not been fully transitioned into the legacy fund. We still have funds set aside for contingencies that may materialize or may not materialize. So it's not fully even established yet at this point. So I think, and I guess it's not such that interest income is earned through a GIC. If we start pulling out some of these corporate bonds and government bonds, and the long-term sustainability of this fund is what's put into question. It was never designed to be having a significant chunk of interest income withdrawn like that. But again, I can't, without providing you the financial picture of that investment, then I won't be able to comment on that, other than to remind council that the full 500,000 was used for 2026.
So we're going to move on to a different question. We'll go with Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. That leads into like a question that I had planned on asking today, and I will give credit to Councillor Blackwell, who had informed to me that there have been some new grants made available. So I guess the question that I would have, I've looked them up retroactively since then, and there is a significant amount of funding that the federal government has made available. If we move forward with this funding strategy, like I really appreciate the calculation you put into new growth, so it was properly reflected. So I want to just thank you for that, for the 50% coming out of development charges. But I haven't given up hope that we could somehow get a grant to cover some of this. And how does that work with what Mike is suggesting, or the other way? Yes. So I would like to understand how that works, because with that new funding being available, I wouldn't want to have already locked myself into a loan and then found out that I would be able to get a grant. So I just ask our director if he could speak to that for me. I was speaking to the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, just because I heard you. It has $6 billion over a 10-year federal program, and it includes water and wastewater for unlocking housing supply. And with that 50% demand increase, I thought it lined in, but I could be wrong.
Yep. So it deals, what I'm hearing is about the timing. And I know certainly when we did the downtown dig, we were well past the completion before the financing, before we signed the papers. So even if we did the construction in 2027, I'm thinking that, you know, if it's similar to the downtown dig, it would have been early in 2028 before we would sign those contracts with the Ontario loan infrastructure. Like it's you don't sign them beforehand. It's post construction is generally the time frame. So there is opportunity to lobby and advocate well into the cycle of construction before those figures are locked into for permanency. Director, please.
Yes, Through you. So I guess it depends on the timing of the grant and the deadline and what the requirements are and whether it needs, what stage the project is in at that point. But definitely if we would be pursuing grant opportunities and we were successful, then we would just simply reduce the amount of external borrowing that's required for that project overall. And it does take a while to get the debentures ready. So again, I'd have to look at the timing of that fund and when any kind of announcements would be made for that. But
If we do get the grant, would we then adjust the impacts to the ratepayer? I'm assuming if if the grant's provided, it's not necessarily coming out of those reserve funds that the ratepayer is responsible for, would there be any improvement to the ratepayer provision potentially, or no?
yeah, through you. So like it would be reduced by the amount of the total 5.41 million would be reduced by the amount of the grant that we received, and that's fewer debt that we would take on and then split 50-50. Yeah.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, this could be a long discussion about whether internal or external financing. Is there any chance that we could approve the overall project without actually tying the financing to internal or external for the use of moving this ahead? Plus, I want to introduce something that's going to scare the heck out of us. Most of you were this term. Last term, I was talking to the mayor, it wasn't this mayor, it was the other mayor. And, we talked about Mayor Eadie, and we talked about this huge project behind No Frills. And I kept saying, taxpayers shouldn't be paying for developers and development. And, really, guys, what we're doing here, I want to surprise you, or I'm going to surprise you, 50% going to development fees. We don't have enough development fees in the last 5 years on average to cover the principal and the interest. We collect about $150,000 a year in development fees in the water. That's not going to cover a 10-year loan for this project of $3 million for the developer. So let's not fool ourselves. What we really should do, and I know this is going to be painful, that we should add the whole cost to the users for now until we actually get some sort of validation we're going to get a grant. Or because what's going to happen first year, you pay the $150,000, we're short. Where's the money going to come from?
The Water Reserve Fund.
Water Reserve Fund. Second year, you're short again. It comes from the Water Reserve Fund. Basically, you're going to go broke. Plus, you got to remember we have some additional projects over the next 10 years. We have the Kincardine High School. We're going to have some money there because there's no development fees. But we're going to have to take money out of the Water Reserve to bring water to the high school. We also have Kincardine Avenue. We haven't figured out what to do with that $1 million that's still stranded in Kincardine Avenue. We have a policy, and we actually are hoping that we can charge the landowners, but that hasn't materialized. We also working with Bruce Power. Remember, they're going into their second phase. They're actually, currently, I think, Adam, you would agree, they're out there trying to get bids. We might see some increase from our original budget, which was done, 2 years ago. So let's not fool ourselves. If we don't see a big increase in building, we won't see the development fees that we require for this 50%. So, we're fooling ourselves. Unfortunately, you're going to pass this on to the next term. And so the councillors the next term are going to have stranded debt once again. So you're almost better off, and this thing's not going to take place right away. I believe they're talking construction in 2026, whenever that date is. But we're almost better off to fund it now, whether it's internal or external for the funding, but you're better off to charge the ratepayers the full project for now and hope like heck that we can still use all the development fees that we get for the year, plus the grants, and we can throw it into the water, but at least would cover the cost until we really see what happens in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right now, you're going to strand debt. Thank you.
It's already said.
So that did wander a little bit. That would be maybe not endorsing the plan, but broadly speaking. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. So I've kind of gone over this in a couple of different ways, had a couple chats with folks about this. I would support endorsing the plan as written. One of the things that we did very early on in our term with the Queen Street project was we did internal borrowing. One of the other things that we look at with our asset management plan is that we need a balance of debt and our reserves in order to not back ourselves into any kind of corner. The reason that I'm supportive of this, one, is it's a long-term infrastructure project. It's something that will benefit people for the next 10, 15 years. And so debt, for me, spreading that out versus kind of rating, not that that's the word I would use, reserve funds to pay for it. The other piece I would say is regardless of whether we borrow internally or not, we don't have adequate funding sitting around that I am aware of. Even if we were to take the proceeds from the interest of the Bruce Telecom Fund, like the most that's going to be is $1 million or so. And so we still don't have enough. So we're still needing to go and borrow or raid from a number of reserve funds. I think the other benefit, and I think Councillor Steinhoff-Gray spoke to this a little bit, is there is a lot of pressure right now on development charges and on growth and growth pays for growth. And I think there's opportunity to potentially be able to use that, I don't want to say as leverage, but as an opportunity to say, if you are able to help us out with these projects, we can then lower development charges or not add it to the development charge and therefore make housing more affordable long term. So there is a challenge for me in terms of it's a user pay system. It's always been, water has always been designed like that. So it doesn't scare me to have the water users pay for the water system that they're using. It also doesn't scare me to use debt on something that's long term and that is going to benefit for people for quite a long time, because it doesn't necessarily put us in a position where we don't have funding on a project that might be more emergent or might be something that is more complicated. I think it's a good balance, and I think that it would put us in a good position long term. We do know that we have other water projects coming up, so whether we argue a long time about how we're going to fund this one, there's additional water projects coming. So I think we need to kind of take the long-term strategy and view of it, and so I'm supportive of the strategy as written.
Director, please.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I did want to provide some additional information and context specifically relating to Councillor Stewart's comments. So if we are in relation to paying off the collected DCs for the debt. So if we take the last 5 years of development charges for water specifically, it's about an average of about 150,000, 143,000 in DCs collected each year. And if we take this 5.41 million and amortize this debt over 20 years at about 3.5%, our annual payments would be 380,000 a year. So half of that is 160. It's pretty close. So I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't tell council that we're going to have enough development charges in the future. However, it's just a good gauge to say what history has shown.
Kim, please.
This is just an aside, but the recently announced Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund that was mentioned, one thing I would encourage everyone to look at is when the federal government announces funding programs, we need to look at what Ontario has done, because there's a requirement most of the time for the province to sign on to these agreements. And the last few years, there has been a significant lag between a federal announcement and the province of Ontario actually signing on to that, which is why we don't have any details about how you would apply or all the things that you'd normally expect to have with a funding program. So we are still waiting for that information, and it may be some months before we see that, but that doesn't mean we're not going to continue to turn over every stone. And I do really appreciate any leads that anybody runs across as far as funding opportunities. We want to be able to pursue those, so thank you.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. That last comment from our treasurer sort of surprised me. I thought this was a 10-year project. You know, stretching this to 20 years really puts a real dampener on our, borrowing opportunities. I mean, there's lots of other things we want to do. And if we start borrowing on 20 years, we're going to stop doing a lot of other things because we won't have the funds like, doing the pool or doing things like this. I think boring 20 years just makes these numbers look better, but you don't usually do long-term boring for some project like this unless it's a water treatment plant, something of that nature. But boring 20 years is a little bit outside the box. I wouldn't recommend boring 20 years. We should keep it under 10.
To the director, are there some guidelines from the province regarding the terms that we can negotiate for term of loan or anything like that? Or, go ahead.
So through you, so I don't know where the 10 years came from. It's a 10-year financial plan, which is probably why you might have been thinking that, Councillor Stewart. The actual analysis that Hemson did was actually dead over 30 years, so this is in between the two. But 20 years is quite common. We can select that easily through Infrastructure Ontario, and that's actually something that I would have recommended anyways, a 20-year period. We have had other projects that have a longer useful life. If it has a long useful life, then we would mirror that with a longer debt repayment approach. And so 20 years we have used for other projects. I don't have that off the top of my head right now, but it is common. For shorter, smaller projects such as a fire truck, I believe we could have used 10 years for that, but 20 years is common.
So I'm going to listen to the comments, and I, what we have heard tonight is not a new conversation about whether we utilize internal or external borrowing. And I was grateful that we clarified that, there's not the intent to subsidize water rates through internal borrowing, so it's the same cost for both the DCs and the utility users, whether it's internal or external. I have valued Councillor Stewart's comments about, this is not going to be the only capital project, significant capital project that's going on, not even this year or next year, but over the next 5 years. And Councillor Blackwell highlighted when you use external financing, you actually do provide some freedom within your own financing. If something does happen, like you don't have to rush to Infrastructure Ontario to get it. So I tend to, you put all those things together, it tends to push towards an argument of actually endorsing what the director has said. There are nuances to how you do it. And, I read it and I said, well, did it work out 50-50 or was it 53-47 or what it was? But I think the balance that's been presented and the logic here supports our municipality's goals, the cost bearing of the people who got to pay for it, and so I would, my question, I suppose, does deferring this till any more information is required or received helpful, or are we sort of approaching a milepost, so to speak, that we need to determine the funding model before we move any further ahead with tendering or engineering drawings or anything like that? Is it like, I'm not sure what council would need in another month or 2 months, but like we got to get to a place where if we are going to move this ahead, council will need to make a decision of some sort. Could either directors speak to this, or council may have to answer the question, is there more information you need? Because if it's just waiting without knowing what you're looking for, that's not productive. If we're waiting for a grant, we don't even know, like there's no sense in doing that. But the motion is here because we're moving along in a progress. We've approved the project up to this point. This is the next logical step. So I would encourage that we make a decision tonight. I would encourage you to ask all the questions you need to ask to figure out what's going on. Sorry, Councillor, did you have a question? No, Oh. Councillor Stewart?
Just to finalize, and maybe the treasurer or Adam can help us with this one through you, Mayor. Can we approve the 5.4 without figuring out the funding at this particular time. No, we approve it, we're just trying to figure out where we're gonna get the funding. Is it gonna be external or internal? Because this project's gonna take place in '26, but the money's probably not required until late '26, '27.
So through you, Mayor, that the project is included in the 2026 budget, it's just unfunded, and we can't advance any work and proceed to tender without having a funding source. So our staff recommendation is to determine a funding source before this project advances any further.
Councillor Brenger, you had a question?
Through the chair, I'm wondering if you could help me understand, and I'm sorry if I missed it, how much the total cost at the end of the 20-year borrowing period would be if we went through the external funding with the government, if we financed the entire 5.4 million externally.
Sorry, through you. I did a rough calculation, so, and this information wouldn't come forward until, further on, but it was around 2 million for borrowing costs over a 20-year period, based on current interest rates and 20-year time period.
So the total cost becomes 7.4 million.
Correct.
I struggle with external borrowing for this reason. I am adverse to spending millions of dollars on interest. It's part of buying a home, I know, and it's hard for me. But with these government loans, my understanding is that there's no option to pay off your loan quickly like you can a mortgage. There's no option to pay it off early and save some of that interest if you happen to come into extra money. And that's the part that scares me, because we're guaranteed to spend 7.4 million instead of 5.4. However, if we were to be more creative and find internal sources, we could potentially avoid
It's a debenture.
that.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Sorry, perhaps as a point of clarification, it seems to me your options are you secure the debt externally and pay the interest over time to amortize the cost out, or you're essentially asking the people who are going to be paying for it to pay for it now.
So the funding, I believe, would come from a reserve fund of some sort that we have in the municipality, which ultimately, if we are being honest and fair about this, the carrying costs of an internal loan are no different than the carrying costs for an external loan. Otherwise, we begin subsidizing water rates, which is a principle that I am not interested in at all. All right, so we have a motion on the floor at this point. We have had a significant debate about this. And it was moved by Councillor Steinhoff Gray and seconded by Councillor Kavanagh that Council endorse the funding model for the Tiverton Water Supply Project, which allocates project costs on a 50-50 basis between growth, development charges, and existing users' utility rates. And further, that the municipality proceed with external debt financing for the full project cost, with repayment supported equally by DCs and utility rates in accordance with the cost allocation.
Record it.
And Councillor Stewart has asked for a recorded vote.
I support the project.
Councillor Stewart?
Absolutely no.
Councillor Hinchberger?
No.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray? Just a clarification. I don't think I have a decision, right? Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Blackwell,
Yes.
Councillor Pinger? No. And Mayor?
Yes.
Too close.
And that passes.
So the motion is passed. All right, we move on to the next resolution. We need a mover and seconder that council authorize reserve and reserve fund transfers totaling $434,933 to address capital project cost overruns as detailed in the attached 2025 summary of reserve and reserve fund transfers, moved by Councillors Blackwell and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, was there discussion? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Sorry, thank you. Through you. Director, when I was reading through some of the projects and the overages and things, some of them were saying, you know, the overages for this were offset by that. And yet we're still having to do the report to kind of move things around. Is that just because some things are in different reserve funds so that they can't more easily be done internally? If that makes sense?
Yeah, through you. So we require council's approval in order to do the reserve fund transfers, because the auditors will look at what's in the budget for each project and what was spent, and therefore we need council's authority to then actually make those reserve fund transfers. So right now everything is recorded as a pending transfer, but we won't actually transfer the funds until this approval is obtained.
Well, just a follow up that I think it might be misleading for people listening to say that we have to add an additional 434 when we're actually overall under by almost 2.5 million in our capital budget. So for the past year. So I know some projects are not finished, but it's not that we necessarily are over.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's always good to hear that we have an overage here. You don't ever want to be negative. That can cause a lot of problems, so well done. And, you know, $2.5 million back in the reserves gives us a little bit more money for next year. Thank you.
All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Seasonal patio bylaw review. We need a mover and seconder. The council directs staff to update the current seasonal patio bylaw 2025-119 and associated policy permitting patios to be located within the sidewalk area, provided AODA and OTC requirements are met. Moved by Councillors Kavanaugh and Hinchberger. Director, you want to comment or just wait for questions? The report was pretty straightforward. Questions from council members? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. This isn't so much a question, perhaps, as more comment. And one, the updated policy that we had brought forward and approved previously was supported by our accessibility committee, and I think spoke specifically to the point of the sidewalk being a clear, straight path of travel is the preferred. From my perspective, especially as someone with a visual disability, this is more challenging to navigate, not impossible, but more challenging. And I do have some concerns. I think that we are perhaps not violating the AODA with having people cross the differently textured and colored utility strip as part of the path of travel. But I would feel it doesn't necessarily adhere to the spirit of the legislation. And so for that reason, I won't be supporting it. I also think it takes up more space and doesn't necessarily enhance the size of the patio. So for me, it just feels like I'm struggling to find a win with it, unfortunately.
Okay, all in favor of I'm sorry, did you have a comment, Deputy Mayor? Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mayor, through you. It's really echoing this. I don't know if our director can make any comment on it. While I appreciate effectively the thought process is any of the configurations would have to be compliant. It does, and maybe there is some envisioning of this, but it does seem that the the essence of the legislation as we know it is for a clear path that is straight in order to facilitate accessibility. Is that something that you have read differently or been advised of differently?
So through you, Mayor Craig. So through the guidance of legal counsel, in looking at this, they have confirmed that we can deviate the straight clear path of travel. The intention with the clear path of travel is ensuring that we maintain a path of travel of a minimum width. And then in making any adjustments from a straight path of travel, that it's done so in a manner that isn't in excess of a 20-degree angle. And so the schematic that was provided with the report as an attachment, we had BM Ross prepare a diagram for us just to reflect what the overall kind of transitional length would be at each end of that corridor to get people from the sidewalk out to the temporary walking path.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I'd like to thank staff for all their hard work on this. We had, I believe, 2 patios last year. Is that correct? And so, three, sorry, yes, one is slightly different than the others. So the hope with this is that as we move forward, we do something that's easier to accommodate a wide range of businesses and envibrant and brighten the downtown with more patios going forward. I know a lot of other communities do a lot of different styles, and they're maybe not the ideal or the perfect solution, but as long as they're legal and they build towards building a more vibrant, stronger commercial downtown, I think this is a win.
Councillor Henchberger, please.
Through you, Chair. It's always tough to try to balance out what can seem to be some conflicting demands. In the end, for me, it might be oversimplifying. I go back to, first and foremost, the downtown area is a commercial area. And I have some long-term concerns about the downtown commercial area and whatever I can do in some cases to shave the corner just as much as you can, I think are worth it.
All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? And that was carried. Airport food service proposal follow-up. We need a mover and seconder. The council receive this report for information and that council defer consideration of the proposed permanent food service operation at this time, and that any future commercial opportunities at the airport be considered as part of a broader review of the airport's long-term role and land use. Smoker's cough. She smokes, not me. No, that's not true. Secondhand smoker cough. I'm sorry. We need a mover and seconder for this motion. Councillor Blackwell and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any questions? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Blue Box transition update. We need a mover and seconder that council receives the report as presented for information purposes and directs staff with any recommendations or changes for future consideration. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Prenger. Discussion? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Good report. Glad to see it. Unhappy. It is disappointing to see that our tonnage is the same, especially after that incredible January 1st. I think we need to move on this. I would keep the hours for now, the extended hours for another maybe quarter, and see what they look like at the end of June for now. It's only been 1 quarter, but I'm really concerned about this tonnage. We're supposed to basically divert a lot of the recycling equipment away from our landfills. We're hoping to get 10 years from myself. We only get 7. It's quite serious. What I'd recommend, and I'm hoping that you'll take this, Mark, is that we need to do a few audits. We need to maybe take 1 truckload every month and break it down. Empty it out. I'd be more than willing. I'm not going to ask your staff to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, but we need to do an audit on it to really see what is garbage what is recycled before January 1st and what would have been recycled after January 1st. Maybe do an audit in, let's talk about April, May, one in May, one in April, one in May, one in June. Maybe do town of Kincardine, Village of Tiverton, and a rural area, just one each, and then report back to us, because we're going to have to change this. We can't see the tonnage still increasing, or because it should be diverted by now. And I think we need to understand exactly, I know I'm asking you and your staff to do a little bit, but I think it would give us a great insight, because some other communities have gone the other way and decided to go with clear bags. And if you see them, you know, then the decision's at the curbside and they don't accept them. Or the other thing is we might have to start charging more for bags. And that's the last thing we want to do, because we want to extend our landfill site at least for every cell for 10 years. It's a huge savings. I don't know if it's doable, but what do you think of this idea?
May I respond to that? Just 2 points, both good. An audit is not bad at all. You had some good suggestions, but if I might recommend, could we offer our manager of environmental services to come back with a way that they could accomplish what you're looking to see, but you'll likely have a better idea of what the manpower requirement is and stuff like that. So I also agree with you. It's a little early in the process. It's hard to tell January, February, March what garbage trends are going to be like for the summer. But if that's an appropriate response, CAO, to allow staff to bring back the, you know, put the
Short report, yeah.
well, tell us how they're going to do it. That's the question.
Through you, Mayor. And I would put this question to Mark and to maybe Lori. This shift in what's recyclable is a pretty significant change in people's behavior. We're asking them to recycle a lot of materials that people aren't used to recycling. And I wonder whether or not there's a place here for additional public education and awareness raising around this. Like, I wasn't here, but do you feel like, you know, really there has been enough information to really change behavior, or is there a place there to think about, again, getting more of that into people's hands?
Manager or manager?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So Lori's team, included with the communications group, did a fantastic job through the entire process. They actually took the lead far more than I did for communications and trying to get that information out. I think it's also important to recognize that Keene locally, the Kincardine Environmental Group, has also put out some excellent information. And I do believe they might even have some business cards around local businesses where people can scan a QR code and see the enhanced service at the curb. I do think this is a good opportunity based on what we're seeing from tonnages to maybe consider one final information blast out there, whether that's through the utility bills or something like that that are already getting out to the homes. To Councillor Stewart's earlier comments too, while we might be a little early through the second quarter, we do have an RFP out right now for a shredder that we're hoping to see by July. That would be probably a good opportunity for us through that opening quarter, once that is delivered, to actually see through that process what's coming through our site, and might provide a lot of insight for an audit type of suggestion.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I appreciate the shout out to Keene there. One of the things I've had to do is actually print out the material that Basrit provided us and put it right over top of my garbage can, because I found myself putting way more things in than I needed to, and I'm able to divert. But so I do think some additional education would be helpful. The piece, though, I think that we're maybe not talking about so much as the businesses. I know we've talked about the depot having them come. And one of the options for consideration is review of the depot site setup for non-eligible sources, including uses, rates and fees and effectiveness. And that would be something, certainly, we did some engagement prior to the transition about who would use it, who wouldn't use it. We've heard some feedback about people were like, I would use it, but now it's too expensive. So it would be perhaps worthwhile for us to really be reflecting and seeing what we're hearing from that, because I don't have the data to back it up, but I would certainly expect that perhaps some of what we're seeing is coming from businesses putting things into the trash versus recycling it. But that is the only data point that, if we're going to do an audit, that might help us. But if we don't know where it's coming from, then we might not have all the information we need.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I would support an audit of things. It may have been advantageous to have done a baseline beforehand, but we are here now, so we can take a look at what's happening in the moment, I suppose. An anecdotal comment, since I basically visit the dump personally about every other weekend, and I have for the past 12 years. I never put my recycling out. I always took it to the dump with me because I always took my bags and my compost, because I always have lots, with me. And now I just take compost and bags because I can't take my recycling. I had to adjust. I have to put my recycling out now. It's not easy. There is a lot to learn and what can go and can't. However, what I've noticed is an abhorrently crazy amount of cardboard in the garbage bins. Every time I go, I took pictures because I was shocked. And I'm just like, it's not in bags. It's literally flattened and thrown in there. I'm assuming this is coming in a trailer that's been weighed, so it's been paid for, and yet, so technically it's not illegal to do that, but it's not helping our situation at the dump, and it's not helping the environment. So I don't know if there's some way to catch that. I don't know what to do, because I don't think it's something we can say, if you're going to pay for it, we won't let you do it. I don't know how to address that, but it has something I have noticed.
Ooh, Councillor Hinsberger, please. Okay. Okay, so from what I heard, council had a number of different recommendations ranging across some waste issues. Is this a sort of, can this instigate a report from yourself that says, I heard this is how I think we will address these issues, or whether council wants to wait for another quarter to get an update on volumes or what you've done, or what process manager do you think would be the most effective for council to receive the information that we're looking for?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Craig. So we can take some of the feedback here tonight. We can definitely review conditions with our staff at the site as far as if there's potential problems with recycling and ending up in the bins, etc. And we can definitely look at something along the lines of auditing purposes. There's definitely some good recommendations there as well. We have a very good idea what routes the trucks are coming off of. So, if we have concerns around IC&I, then, we can certainly target those routes or whatever, and we'd be glad to bring something back in late Q2 or early Q3.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Yeah, to receive this report and, direct staff with any recommendations. So that's all in favor of that motion? Yeah, okay, good. For Cooner Drive encroachment agreement, we need a mover and seconder that the council of the municipality of Kincardine pass a bylaw to enter into an encroachment agreement for 4 Cooner Drive, moved by councillors Kavanagh and Stewart. Any discussion? Councillor Blackwell.
Sorry, thank you. Through you. In this report, it talks about new structures since the last, sorry, I'm not sure who I'm looking at. Who's, okay, thank you. Since the last time the encroachment agreement was done, is the new encroachment agreement incorporating those structures, or is the request for us to determine whether we actually want to request that they be removed and what was within the existing encroachment agreement be renewed?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, Councillor, the previous agreement expired and it had a survey from 97, and under our new policy, we require a registered plan to be submitted. Under that registered plan, where it goes out into our shore allowance, it found these two other structures that had previously been there. And so that's why we're bringing this back to council, because it wasn't recognized under the previous agreement. So we thought bringing this back is important for council to see that there's actually multiple structures on our shore road allowance that were existing that should be incorporated or at least addressed under this encroachment agreement.
Sorry, thank you. So just for clarity, it wasn't like these have been built since the last encroachment agreement. We're just simply making sure that they're included.
That's correct.
All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Good. Moving on, consideration of bylaws. We need a mover and seconder that. Oh, the wind policy. Oh, there we go. Too bad. We need a mover and seconder that council repeal policy number PD 1.9 and adopt policy number development 04, being the wind generation system development policy. And the council pass a bylaw to adopt policy DEV 04 as presented. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any discussion? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Just one general discussion through you, Mayor. Is this affecting any of the agreements that we currently have? Are we going to have to change a few of them, or are we okay with them?
Manager, please.
Yes, sir. The current agreements will remain in place. They're actually grandfathered under their old compliance certificate from the environment, the EPA, sorry, the Environmental Protection Act. The only one change, sorry, just to go further, the only change would be if they change the nameplate capacity or the number of units. If that was to increase, that would require them to go back through and get a new approval. And that would subsequently alter our agreement.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a point of clarification for those grandfathered wind apparatuses, if you will. They're coming up on end of life. So does that mean they're grandfathered if they choose to renew, or would they go through the new process at that point? Because a number of our wind farms are coming up for end of life. So does that mean they get a grandfather because they pre-existed, or does that give us the ability to consider the renewal as a council?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, you're correct. Those are under a previous approval from the ministry, and they are grandfathered, so they're allowed to repair the nacelles, they'll replace them, blade replacements. There's no requirement for them to renew it or go through it. They're automatically exempt under their previous approval. Like I said, the only alteration would be if they were to increase the number of turbines or increase nameplate capacity. To alter their previous approval, that would send them through the new process to reapply. So they have when I say nameplate capacity, the overall project was assigned through the Renewable Energy Act a certain nameplate capacity. I'm not sure, unfortunately, I don't have that number for the project in 06 that went through our municipality, but that nameplate capacity, say it's 50 megawatts. If they were to change them and go to a higher, then they would be subject to the new provisions under the Environmental Protection Act and would have to reapply.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Can you just provide a bit of clarification on some language in the new policy, Dev.04? In the purpose specifically, the last sentence says the policy will provide developers of wind generation systems in the municipality of Kincardine a preferred policy in regard to such development. I haven't seen that in any of our policies before. Can you explain what a preferred policy for those developers is?
Can you clarify which section of that policy?
Section 1, purpose.
Purpose on top, yeah. Okay.
The second sentence.
It's referring to this as a preferred policy that we'll follow for any new developers that would have to go through. That they would follow this policy so it's consistent across all applications for new renewable energy projects.
Just to
So
clarify,
the question is
Sorry,
it
that-
preferred
if
by
the-
them or preferred by us?
If it's our policy, it'd be preferred by us.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
sorry, just to clarify, we're rescinding the old policy, so it no longer applies? So this is the only policy?
Correct.
So it's our only policy and our preferred policy? I find
Fair
that.
enough.
It suggested to me that there was something else that was still applicable in some cases perhaps, but we preferred this kind of thing. So I just wanted to clarify that this will be our only policy moving forward.
Yeah, and just speaking, we could probably, sorry, yes, that's fine. We could take that out too if we have to clarify. This is just for, it's not adopted, it's still in draft. If it makes it more clarified.
I think staff always has that ability to make administrative and typo amendments. Nothing further. All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Consideration of bylaws, 2026 rates and fee amendment bylaw. We need a mover and seconder that the 2026 rates and fee amendment bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time. Finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2026-038, moved by Councillor Blackwell and Stewart. This deals with the new columbarium construction at the cemetery. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. 2026 taxation bylaw. Need a mover and seconder that the 2026 taxation bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time. Finally passed, numbered as bylaw 2026-039, moved by Councillors Deputy Mayor Clark and Kavanaugh. All in favor? That's carried. And we need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, third time. Finally passed the 8th of April 2026. The Cooner Drive Encroachment Agreement Bylaw 2026-040. The Wind Generation System Development Policy Bylaw 2026-041. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Steinoff Gray. All in favor? That's carried. Consent agenda, you know the routine. If there's something you want to talk about, let us know and we'll deal with it either tonight or subsequent meeting. Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I would just, if we could just speak to it quickly today, just because it's on point with our discussion about blue boxes and landfills. Under 8.1 Alpha Bravo Spring Clean Week, there's some really great activities that I believe it's Keen's putting them on, where they have a repair cafe on April 18th to repair things that you might otherwise throw out, tree planting, cleanup kits, the Community Clean, Earth Day, various activities. I think that might be something that we want to emphasize at the end of this meeting, just with some of the points that we've had today.
It could be general announcements too. Yeah, just as you said. Okay, seeing nothing else, we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated April 8, 2026, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Deputy Mayor Clark. All in favor? That's carried. General announcements. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I don't have too many announcements tonight, but I do want to just say that I'm thinking about the community of Wingham and the surrounding area, and that if you know people who are needing help, the Kids Help Phone is always available, as is the One Stop Talk Crisis online service. Thanks.
No announcements.
Thank you. Just wanted to say that the Tiverton Lions will be participating in that Earth Week and doing our part for the community. Thank you.
Councillor Steinoff Gray.
Thank you. As Councillor Stewart's already brought it up, I know that I will make sure personally to participate in Earth Week, and I can't wait to see what broken things I can bring to be repaired.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to share that on Saturday, April 11th, between 10 and 3 at the Davidson Center, there is going to be the Kincardine Health and Wellness Fair. So if your spring energy has you out picking up some garbage and tidying things up, you get the urge to get into shape and have a kickoff to summer, this would probably be a good thing to check out.
Deputy Mayor?
Just wanted to say that my kids had a great time over the weekend doing the egg hunt. So a shout out to the Tiverton Agricultural Society, the Rotary Club. They did, I think, every egg hunt that there was over the weekend.
Okay, actually, there's a lot of things going on. There's the job fair tomorrow at the Davidson Center from 4 to 7. If you are, how many employers will be there, manager? 55 employers there looking for people to be employed.
No, that's old guys, I don't think.
At the Chesley Community Center, April 22nd, there's the Day of Mourning, which remembers workers that have been killed or injured on their work site. April 25, the Tiverton Agricultural Society is hosting a regional conference at the Whitney Crawford Community Center. Home and Garden Show on April 25th at the Davidson Center. And StatsCan is starting a new Canadian census. We'll get the first mail outs roughly the first week in May. So if you get it, it's not a scam. It's actually finding out stuff that is important to run programs in Canada. Anything from yourself, Kim? All right, we need a mover and seconder that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act is amended for the purpose of considering closed session minutes dated March 25th, a position plan, procedure, criteria, instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding the new Kincardine Senior School. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, human resources matter. A proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality of Kincardine, surplus lands update. And further, the council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved by councillors Steinoff, Gray, and Blackwell. All in favor? Carried.